Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored, Captain Sir Tom Moore became a global hero during the pandemic. His family stands accused of tarnishing his legacy. Tonight, exclusively, they respond.
We should have done it in a different way.
When I first walk in, the first thing I see is a luxurious spa pool. That's got nothing to do with Captain Tom.
It was never intended to be the Captain Tom Foundation building or anything like that.
Articulate how it's been for you.
Utterly devastating.
And how much were you paid?
I was paid £18,000 for that.
The only question is whether you should have pocketed the cash. Good evening from London and welcome to a special edition of Piers Morgan Uncensored, a world-exclusive interview with the embattled family of Captain Sir Tom Moore. Tomorrow will be a good day, he said. And like him, it was just what we needed in our darkest hour. Captain Tom Moore was a hero of the pandemic. He won the nation's hearts by walking 100 laps of his garden in lockdown, raising £38 million for NHS charities. The whole world loved him. The late Queen knighted him. And when his foundation launched, it looked set to become a philanthropic force. But the 100-year-old war hero died with COVID in 2021. Now his family stand accused of failing to protect his legacy and enriching themselves using Captain Tom's name. Hannah Ingram-Moore is the charity's co-founder, his daughter. She's been criticised for her salary as well as big payments for public appearances. The Charity Commission is investigating conflicts of interest between the foundation and family businesses. Most incendiary of all, they added a home spa to a foundational building in the grounds of their listed home, and they're fighting plans to tear it down. The family insists they've done nothing wrong. They want to help the world in Captain Sir Tom's good name. But is that already too late? Hannah, Colin, Georgia, Benji, thank you very much indeed for sitting down with me. Hannah, let me ask you straight off the bat, why have you agreed to do this interview? What do you hope to get out of this?
I think, Piers, you've been on this journey with us since almost the very beginning, back in those early days of 2020 and lockdown, when the world started talking to my father. And of course, with all the love that comes with something like that, and there really was love, global adoration of him and everything that he'd done to give hope to the world. There was always an underbelly of hate, but we lived with it because, in fact, what he was doing is he was giving hope to the world, and all we wanted to do was support him to do that.
What did that underbelly of hate look like?
It never genuinely occurred to us, and maybe that seems foolish, but it never occurred to us that anyone could hate a 100-year-old man walking up and down to support the NHS and the family behind doing everything they could to support him. And so when it first happened, I remember it was Benji who said to me, "Mum, you might not want to look on your Twitter," I think it was. And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because it's horrible." And I think the shock, the deep shock that people were saying, you'll have to bleep this out if you need to. They were saying, "Bit should die." She should be jailed for harming the elderly. Bet she's got a cattle prod taking her father around the garden. Hope the whole family get COVID and die, including him. And it went on and on and on and on. One day, we were doing 30 interviews a day. Not because we wanted to, but for love and for hope. And we got a call and I think you said, "Hannah, can you come quickly? We've got an interview to do." I was in my work shirt that had the company logo on it. So I ran to do it, to be with my father. And the hate that came after that, there she is, trying to manipulate live to get her business in the spotlight. It had never been anything of the sort. So Colin and I sat there and thought, maybe I have to stop being a director of our business, because maybe the campaign of hate is going to be so damaging we'll never recover from it.
I mean, I've got some of the emails that you were receiving. You kept them. I mean, Colin, these are some are aimed at you and some are aimed at to the foundation.
Yep.
But this one, just a sleazy pair of pond slime parasites fleecing people on the back of an old man's heroism. He must be turning in his grave at the disgusting parasitic leech called his daughter. Hope you all get COVID and disappear for good. This is someone who's put his actual name here and his email, right? I mean, when you see that, Colin, what are you feeling?
I think it's just disgusting. I mean, it's it's been horrendous.
This was, to be clear, this was in July of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After
So this
all
is
the
very
media
recent.
coverage
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
stuff that's been going on. And we will come to the specifics about that.
Yeah.
But just this reaction, and it goes on. I mean, there's so many of these. Captain Tom, a true gentleman, inspiration to millions. His daughter, a disgusting, parasitic pond slime with the morals of a dead slug. And so it goes on. I mean, I can't really believe what I'm reading here.
I know. I mean, I've.
This is your wife they're talking about.
Yeah, no, and my family,
Yeah.
and I've spent many years in rugby clubs and heard lots of language, but all in one sentence, and very personal, and individual, particularly to Hannah. It's just totally unacceptable. And though you try not to read it, you can't avoid it.
Well, this one is a letter addressed to you, Georgia.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're 14 years old. I have a young daughter, nearly 12, so I can't even imagine what this must have been like. But it was to Benji and Georgia. Are you aware that your parents, your mother more than your father, is a vile, greedy bleep? A vile, diseased, greedy bleep. With a copy of a newspaper story about what's been going on. When you received this, what did you think?
At first, I thought it was from my friends saying, "Oh, I'm so excited to see you back at school and stuff." And then my dad took it and was like, "Oh, don't read it. Just don't." And then I said, "Oh, no, I really want to read it." And then I was like, "Oh, that's ridiculous. Why would someone say that?"
I mean, the idea, Hannah, that someone would take the trouble to write a letter to your daughter here to this address. As her mum, what does that make you feel?
Oh, it's devastating. This is a pretty pink envelope with unicorns and hearts on it, deliberately done so that we wouldn't see it, so that Georgia might pick it up innocently and open it. You would think it was a lovely little letter from her friend.
Like candy
Pretty,
blush on the back. Handwritten. You would absolutely never think in a million years that the content would be like it was.
But something, when it came, I remember saying, wait, because something about it, because mostly, you know, that children George's age, they're speaking on Snapchat. So there aren't many letters that come. And when I saw it, I immediately said to Colin, wait, I think you need to open it.
But have you had death threats as a family?
Yeah.
You all immediately said yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Specific death
Yeah,
threats?
some aimed to her, some aimed to Georgia and me, some aimed to Dad, to all of us, individually, together, everything.
They set up, there's a forum, and in all honesty, I tell you these things because I've been told that they're there. I don't look, because I think if I looked, you wouldn't be able to cope. So there's a forum that they found where they were a group of, whatever they do on the forums, they were all discussing how they were going to come and kill us all in our beds with pitchforks and hammers and...
Firebomb our house.
Yeah.
We know from what's happened to Holly Willoughby
Yes.
Yeah.
in the last week that actually
They can
some of
become a
these people
reality.
can be deadly serious, right?
It's scary.
Have you reported these threats to the police?
Yeah.
Has anything happened because of it?
They're aware of it. And under the Harassment Act, we've got a log which has got it all identified. So if it becomes persistent, we can they can then follow that up.
The last time I saw you all was when I did Life Stories,
Yes.
my show with Captain Tom, and it was honestly one of my all-time favourites. And he was amazing. I mean, 100 years old, I managed to sit through like a 2-hour record.
Yeah.
He was so funny, charming, intelligent, had great stories. Everyone loved him. It seems, there's a picture of him with the Queen here.
There's a
which
picture
I
of
know.
you here.
Yeah, from the interview, but also one of when you all went up for his knighthood. I mean, that moment when he got his knighthood from the Queen, that must have been...
I'm sorry, Piers, but that was...
Even better,
Yeah, that was even better.
Yeah, but I mean, that was an amazing thing. And what did it feel like as a family, Hannah, for you all to be there and meet the Queen and have her tap him on the shoulder?
It was magic. I mean, I remember us being in the car going down, and I turned to him and said, "Nervous? Feeling okay?" And he went, "Not at all," in the way that you could imagine. We felt our roles were just as his backup. And what was amazing, though, and I think that people didn't know is that the Queen had asked to see all of us. So we weren't there in our ordinary sort of behind the scenes roles. We were there to stand with him.
But what did she say to you guys, the Queen?
Well,
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she talk to you about dogs or something?
And school as well.
Yeah.
About what year I'm in, how I'm joining
She
it,
was so
and
cool.
online learning.
It was like being a grandmother,
Yeah.
talking to a grandmother.
She was the nation's grandmother.
Yeah.
But she saw him. And in some of our photos, you'll see it. She saw him. And it was two people from the same generation.
Yeah.
Their eyes met. And she smiled in us. Honestly, it was just amazing to see him knighted at the age of 100. And it was, I think if he died the next day, he'd have been happy. It meant everything to him.
What's incredible is that all happened because just outside here, the famous walk, because he'd been unwell, he'd had a bad fall, he'd broken some ribs and hurt his lung and so on, and he decided to try and get a bit fitter and was going to walk 100 laps, and you were going to give him £1 a lap, I think, right?
Yeah.
And you just told the local paper, because he was also about to turn 100, he thought it was a nice story in the pandemic, and then suddenly it gets picked up by the local media. Then the national media, I remember I was on Good Morning Britain and we interviewed you guys, and then I was on the first week, and then suddenly this thing explodes. What is it like for you guys sitting here as a regular family? You'd lived with your grandfather for 13 years here, leading a perfectly normal, under the radar life, and suddenly you've got the entire world willing on your grandfather with this walk.
I think it's incredibly difficult to put it into words because genuinely it was the first weekend of lockdown. This was something as part of his rehabilitation program that, being the Yorkshireman himself, always wanted to do. And he was really ill to a point we generally thought we would lose him only a year prior. And he had that grit, he had that determination as a Yorkshireman to go and do this. But it was the first weekend of lockdown. Everyone was a bit stuffed on what they were going to do. And as much as he gave hope to us when he started that walk, he evidently gave it to the nation. But as we crept up the interviews every day, 30 interviews a day, raising £3 million a day, it just becomes utterly surreal.
And Georgia, I mean, this is your granddad, right? And suddenly the whole world knows who your granddad is. That's weird.
It is quite weird. Even some of my teachers like, oh, wait, isn't that your granddad? I'm like, yeah, it is. That's so cool. And
You must have been incredibly proud of him.
I was really proud of him because he achieved so much in a little amount of time.
Before he died, you took him to Barbados, and it got a bit of criticism handed this, that because he died 2 months later. It turned out he'd had pneumonia, I think, on the trip to Barbados, and then he got COVID, and the pneumonia probably reduced his ability to fight the COVID, and it very sadly killed him. He was over 100, so this was not an unexpected shock, as the thing, for the family that he would at some stage pass. But the criticism that came your way, that you should never have taken him to Barbados, that was a contributing factor to his death. What do you feel about that?
It was his dream. Barbados, if you go back in time, he was interviewed, I can't remember which newspaper said, "What's on your bucket list, Captain Tom?" And he wanted to go back to India. He wanted to jump out of an aeroplane attached to somebody and a parachute. And he wanted to go and watch the cricket in Barbados. And Barbados Tourist Board and their Prime Minister were quick off the mark. And this was back in very early, in 20, in the second week of his walk. So he said, yes, please, he'd love to go. We just couldn't go because we were in multiple lockdowns. Finally, we found a period of time when we could all go, and we were all invited. And his dream was to go and see the cricketers in Barbados.
And I see you got a cricket bat over there signed by some amazing West
Amazing.
Indian legends: Gary Soberson, Garfield Sobers, Wes Hall, Joel Garner, Gordon Greenwich. I mean, I'm a cricket fan. These are some of the greatest cricketers to ever play the game.
Amazing.
Were you concerned about him not being physically able to make the trip?
Not at all. In fact, we had doctors to check, and they said, "Go, Captain Tom, enjoy it. Be happy." No one knew how long he was going to live. We also didn't know that he had silent pneumonia, nor did they. But nonetheless, we got on the plane, and we have photos of him on the plane, he was treated like a king. We'd had to take COVID tests before we left. When we arrived, we were quarantined immediately. So we were then put in a place where there were CCTV in the house that we were in. We could not go outside until we'd been cleared again by another test. So we know that he was healthy and that we didn't break lockdown rules and that we were also not COVID positive.
I mean, the criticism, and it was the first time I'd really seen that, was, well, you all got a great holiday out of it too. So, all right for Tom to live his dream, but you're all getting this lovely free holiday in Barbados. Because it was a pandemic, people annoyed, perhaps that they couldn't travel, whatever. You know the argument that came that way. Did you consider any of that?
We paid. The first week was at the guest of Barbados Tourist Board, but after that, we paid for it. It was paid for by us. So it wasn't free.
When I interviewed him for Life Stories, he loved all the attention.
He loved it.
He loved it. He loved being a star.
Yeah.
He'd lived his life anonymously for 99 years and suddenly he's a superstar.
Yeah.
And he loved it. I knew that. But what it showed me was that there was now a rising appetite for looking at ways to attack you as a family.
Yeah.
He died several months later. I would imagine after all you'd all been through, to lose him, even though he was 100 years old, still a massive blow. And it must be even now very strange to be in this house without him.
Yeah.
We were a family of 5, for 13 years. One of the things that we've never quite been able to do is properly to grieve as a family, because we grieved with the world. But we didn't really, because there was so much going on after he passed, that we didn't really have the chance to just close the door, sit down quietly, reflect, think about all the good times that we had with him. We did, of course, but not without being in the glare of the media and everything.
Hannah, what were your last words with your dad?
Oh, it was amazing, actually. It was Benji and I were there, and we stayed with him. And he was really with it to probably the last few hours. Yeah. And there's some things, of course, I can never repeat because he was quite funny and sometimes quite cheeky. But I ran down a list of people who he'd like to speak to. Of course, I can't tell you the answers to any of this, but I'd run down the list and he'd say, definitely not.
I hope I wasn't one of those.
No.
And then he'd say, okay, yes to that one. Yes to that one, absolutely not to that one. And so we had a bit of fun right to the end.
What were the last things that you had chatted to with your grandfather?
As Mum said, I keep as much of it private as possible, but for him, I think he was just saying, go do your thing, be proud of what you're doing, continue George and me doing amazing things, and how proud he was of all of us. And that for us was such a special moment, because we really had lived with him close, and he was a really tight part of the family.
You must all miss him, Georgia, terribly. Amazing character.
I miss him terribly, because after sports we would go chat about sports. How if I got really angry, he would say, why did you get angry? We'll sort it out. Practice. We'll watch something on the TV to sort it out. We'll go and paint something just to make you forget about it.
Welcome back to Uncensored and my exclusive interview with the family of Captain Sir Tom Moore. You always said tomorrow will be a good day. And Hannah, it's been a difficult number of days for you as a family, actually, since then. And a lot of it is centred around these issues surrounding the Captain Tom Foundation, the charity you set up in his memory, and various other parts of the pie around that. So let's go through some of this. Let's start with this building, because this is the Captain Tom Foundation building. And as we sit, you're waiting to hear in 2 or 3 weeks as to whether this has to be knocked down or not. Let's go back to the start of this. When you first applied for planning permission for this, what was the purpose? What did you want this to be?
So you have to go back a little bit in time. People will have seen when he was walking that we had a small above ground pool on the driveway. And when he had fallen and broken his hip and was terribly ill, he came home and wanted to rehabilitate. And he'd said, I fancy walking up and down inside the pool. We're never going to get you in there. That was the foundations of, well, maybe we can get one of those pools where you can walk against the resistance of, but it never happened because of COVID. So this started way back. This wasn't just something we did. There was an intention to have that for him. And then what happened? We had 225,000 birthday cards arrive, which are stored in London at quite a large cost to us. On top of that, thousands of things that are stored in another 3 other places.
I've seen boxes and boxes of stuff, and that's just the stuff you have here.
Tiny amount.
That's a fraction of it. So it was also taking over our house and taking over rooms in our office. So we said, look, why don't we recenter it so that we can have somewhere to put all of those things? Because also those cards, 225,000 birthday cards, we haven't recycled them or got rid of them because we feel they have a place as part of the nation. So this isn't doing things selfishly. It's about how can we preserve the legacy.
So what did you want this building to be?
To be
originally?
Just purely that, some storage, multi-purpose, to be able to put some of his things in it, some of his memorabilia. We also wanted to have it as a community building so that we could help some of the local ageing population. Maybe we could have some Pilates classes up here. Maybe they could come and do what my father couldn't do and walk up and down in the resistance pool. And also have meetings. Because this is the perfect place when talking about the legacy that my father's left, of that incredible legacy of a world without ageism. And
Okay, so that's the original plan, and that gets approved by the council.
Yes.
But then you make another submission, and
Yes.
this time you wanted to add a spa pool, which is what I've just seen around the corner, which is, it's quite a big spa pool. Why? Why did you need to have that?
Well, that was the historical part. So we bought it because we talked about doing it with my father.
Right, but he's already,
But he's
so
already
given that
gone.
he'd have died by the time you did this, so why did you want to add the spa here as a family?
Because we wanted it as part of that legacy and because it was a nice thing to do.
I think that was a mistake. I think that was always going to attract. Now, the original plan, I mean, I've been walking around here, and the memorabilia is incredible, from the cricket memorabilia, Joe Root's shirt, Michael Vaughan's England blazer, to the pictures here, and the incredible stuff. But it's very hard to argue that you need a spa pool to pay tribute to your father. And it's very hard to argue that whatever the original plan in your heads, that he would be able to use it, obviously once he died, that argument's gone too. I just don't think you should have done the spa pool. And I think that's what angered the public, because they're like, how does that add anything to the memory of, that looks like you are giving yourselves as a family a nice little treat, but you're using the Captain Tom Foundation umbrella to justify it. That would be what I would say to you.
Yeah, and I think, look, everyone can look in hindsight. And our original application, the name was never intended to be the Captain Tom Foundation. It was supposed to be the Captain Tom Building. It got lost in translation, and we take responsibility for that completely.
Because the original application does name check Captain Tom Foundation a lot.
It does. And
so it looks like the foundation is somehow approving of this, but it turned out they were not approving of it.
No, and this building was not to do with the charity. It was where we could use it for charitable
So do you
work.
accept that you should have, at the very least, told the foundation and sought their approval for it, if you were going to use the name of the foundation for the application?
I think we absolutely didn't intend it to be the Captain Tom Foundation. And it shouldn't have been, and we should have checked it, and we should have made sure it didn't say that. So we completely accept responsibility for it, because the purpose of the building was multi-purpose, for office use, for meetings. And when you look at the part where we've covered that pool, we could have left it uncovered. We could. And hindsight says that we probably should have. So we have to accept that we made a decision and it was probably the wrong one.
I think you played into your critics' hands.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Colin? I
Which
just
was-
think that when I came in, I thought, I wonder how big that is. You know what? It's pretty nice. It's something most people can't afford. It's an expensive, luxurious thing. It has really nothing to do with Captain Tom or his legacy or anything, actually. It's purely just a nice thing for you to have as a family, but you were applying as the Captain Tom Foundation to do it. That's what anger was. Certainly a statement from the foundation said they were not happy about that. They weren't involved. But secondly, just public opinion.
We accept that. We accept it. We were caught up with trying to get the building to do what we wanted it to do. We should have we wanted to leave the name of Captain Tom here as a legacy, and we should have done it in a different way, without any doubt. And we've suffered as a result.
A lot of the locals, Benji, they've also been angered by this. Mm-hmm. They also think the building itself is a bit of an eyesore, but it's just an aesthetic detail of this.
Yep.
But do you agree that the spa thing has just goaded people into thinking, maybe not what you intended at all, but that actually you were benefiting from this?
Yeah, what I hope people understand as well is we did not use charity money for this. It may have, hindsight, we shouldn't have called it a Captain Foundation building. It slipped through the net, and that is responsibility we take. But never once did we use money from the foundation, and I hope people can understand that part of it. And also the eyesore thing. Granted, when you build something, people are going to have objections to it. And what I hope they understand is it's also not finished. We haven't finished it.
I think Hannah, I think the thing about this is, if it genuinely was a kind of museum to your father, I think people would accept that. They might want some tweaks to the design or whatever it may be. I think it's that has been the problem. And I think it's a grade 2 listed building, your property here. I have one of those. I know how difficult it is to get anything onto a grade 2 listed site. And the criticism is that you use the Captain Tom Foundation name repeatedly in the application, almost making it very difficult for the council not to approve it. And they did approve it. And then you add this other stuff, which is clearly not part of any kind of museum. That's really where we are with this, aren't we?
I think so. And again, what we talked about was to have charity meetings here. It was never intended to be the Captain Tom Foundation building where it would house staff or anything like that. But look, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and we should have been more careful, and we should have done this differently.
Have you offered to get rid of the spa pool?
We're in the process of appeal, so we are going through the process.
But do you not think it might be, Colin, just good optics to say, regardless of whatever the council say, that was a bad idea, we're going to get rid of it?
At the moment, where we're at is, if we lose the appeal, the whole building has to get demolished.
Right.
And obviously any compromise in between that, we'll have to have a look at. But that is the position, and that would be a great shame.
One neighbour told the Daily Mail, I knew Captain Tom quite well, he would have hated what's gone on here. What do you feel when you hear that?
He would. We thought we had really good relationships with the neighbours. It's been unfortunate that they've taken a stance. But we wouldn't want that to happen. The village has been fantastic to us. And really, there are certain people in the village that have gone way over and above and beyond. Yeah. And, we've done an awful lot for the village as well over the years. And we were quite sad to see all of that. And we wouldn't want it, and maybe, they wouldn't want it either.
Hannah, who's paid for this building?
We have.
We have.
All personal money?
All personal money.
So not a penny has come
Not
from any money that was raised in your father's name?
Not one penny. Not
and that's
one penny.
categoric. There'll be no paper trail.
There'll be no paper trail.
100%.
So it's entirely your money?
Entirely.
See, that's why, again, I'll just ask you one more time, because I think it's important. Regardless of what the council decide with this appeal, and they may decide to raise the whole thing, in which case this becomes a moot point. But if they don't, do you not think it would be a good idea to get rid of that spa pool?
Honestly, I think that how I feel about this whole thing now is just sorrow, because in a week's time, that judgment will be made. So I don't want to think of, we've just got to deal with it. And
It's more, I'm thinking more about the optics and public opinion.
but we might not have a choice, right?
No,
So
you might
it
not.
will be,
The choice might not be yours, but right now you have a choice about how you view that. And it seems to me you do regret it. You do understand why people haven't liked the fact you used the foundation name to process this application and then put a spa pool in. It might go some way to dissipate the criticism, to say, regardless of what the council decide, we understand now the anger that's created, and we're going to get rid of that pool, and we're going to make it more of what the rest of this building is, a genuine museum to your father.
yeah.
I think if it goes against us, then we've got to look at the whole building and see
You know what I mean, Colin,
how
right?
we could redesign it, because obviously
Yeah.
the facilities are out there.
But why don't you just say, Colin, we're going to get rid of the pool?
Well, we have to see what happens, but at
No,
the
you
moment,
don't.
the only
You
option,
don't know. It's your pool.
yeah,
You could be ordered to raise it all,
yeah,
which might happen.
which is the only.
But right now, for the purposes of this interview, given that you accept it was a mistake, I would offer you the chance to say, regardless, we're going to get rid of it.
So we'll have to, honestly, Piers, we will have to look at how we can redesign the building and the roof structure to.
Why are you
change
reluctant to say you'll get rid of it?
that. Well, because we haven't looked at that as an option. Because at the moment it's a black and white situation of either or, and we haven't looked at. In order to redesign it, we'll have to look at how.
But
we
I would
redesign
say,
it.
look, if I'm watching this, and I'm like, come on, you know everybody hates that pool. You know why they hate it. You know, really, you shouldn't have done it the way you did it. You know, you shouldn't have used the foundation's name to do this. Just, we understand that, and we're going to get rid of it. Because
Yeah.
we believe this should be a legacy to your father, and we know that that is what's caused a lot of anger.
And if we had options, that would definitely be one of them.
Well, that is always an option. You can just get rid of it.
No, it's not.
Why?
Because when we go to appeal, it's keep it or tear it all down.
Right.
There isn't a
But
middle.
even if you get allowed to keep it, I would say get rid of it.
Well, if we are allowed to keep it, we will talk about what we're allowed to do.
But
and
you want to keep it.
may-
In light of all the...
it may be absolutely one of the conditions.
No, I
to
understand
do it.
that. But I'm not talking about what the council decide. I'm talking about, do you actually want to keep it now?
I
Given
think,
all the aggravation it's caused, and given, to me, it's pretty indefensible, given what your plan was for this building, that's really the point I'm making. Should you not just say, we get it, it's wrong, we didn't think this through properly, and we're going to get rid of it? You have a chance now before anybody else makes that decision for you, if you want to do that.
I think we would sit down and decide what we want to do. The actual pool itself, the thing that has made people angry, and the reason, and we know we did this wrong, is we covered it. We built over it. And the compromise solution, of course, is to have it just in situ outside without being covered. And
Well, look, to be clear, the charity's trustees said at no time were the Captain Tom Foundation's independent trustees aware of planning permissions made by Mr. and Mrs. Ingram-Moore purporting to be in the foundation's name. Had they been aware of any applications, the independent trustees would not have authorised them. So it's not quite as straightforward as that. They wouldn't have authorised them if they'd known. And you were using the foundation name for the planning permission application. And that's why I simply come back to, when I walked around here, I feel my heart swell about this amazing guy, and I love what you've begun to do here as a tribute to him, and I could imagine people wanting to come and see it. But when I first walk in, the first thing I see is a luxurious spa pool. That's got nothing to do with Captain Tom, at all. And yet you use the Captain Tom Foundation name to get it. And that's why I'm surprised that, given I've asked this a few times now, you don't just say, actually, we get it, that's going to go, regardless of whatever the council says. So I'll give you one last chance. Then I will move on. But I think it's important.
I think, though, that I can't possibly answer that before we, as a family, would sit down and discuss it.
What do you think, George?
As my mum said earlier, my granddad really wanted us to walk in the pool.
Sure, but he can't.
but other people can.
Yeah.
And that's and the whole part of this application is that the community piece. And we've had that community piece at the heart of it, and that's why I try really hard not to react negatively to this, because the purpose of the building is to allow the community to enjoy it. And that was the heart and soul behind this. And it's not that this is a museum, but our whole purpose was that my father couldn't walk in that amazing resistance pool, which in the end is a 5 metre by 2 metre pool, but other people can. Part of the ageing population can. We have a Pilates teacher who's waiting for this space to be authorised so she can do Pilates classes for our ageing population. So until those dreams are dead, until we've been told you can't do any of
Hannah,
that.
see, again, I don't want to be cynical, but I don't think that was the main motivation for that pool. I think the main motivation was you wanted a nice bar pool as a family to use yourselves.
Of course, but part of...
I don't think it's really about whether other old people are going to come in and use it. I think you guys wanted to use it yourselves, and that's fair enough, right? You're perfectly entitled to spend your money however you want to spend it, by the way, right?
Of course
If
it
it's
was.
your money that paid for all this, it's your call.
Yes.
This is not a legal thing, right? This is just, I guess it's a moral thing. It's whether you feel comfortable, given the furore, that the first thing people come into when they come into the Captain Tom Foundation building is a spa pool that is just a luxurious item.
I think, just to correct that, this now is not the Captain Tom Foundation building. It was done in error on the first application. On the second application, it's called the Captain Tom. And
It's called the what?
Captain Tom building,
Right.
because it's our legacy. It doesn't
Well,
have...
well, it's actually because, I don't know, Colin, to be fair, it was the foundation trustees weren't even aware of the first application, so
No,
you weren't,
and we
you weren't able to use it in the second one.
No, but we didn't anyway. So we've...
But that's why you didn't use it.
No, it wasn't actually, because it was already in 12 months before. So we corrected it. We found out we'd done that. We realised we'd done it, and we corrected it. So it was called Captain Tom building. Captain Tom lived in this building in our grounds, and it was called the Captain Tom building.
Why do you care so much about the spa pool that you're prepared to damage your reputations going forward just through, it seems to me, slight, I might be wrong, but a slight sort of, well, sod you, we're keeping it mentality, which I can understand because of the attacks you've had, but wouldn't it just be better for the optics to get rid of the thing?
It might be, but we have to look at the design. The design of the building was set up in such a way. So we don't want to commit to it.
Hannah, you got criticised for going to Wimbledon tennis.
Oh, yes. I
And I remember watching this live actually. You were on centre court and your father's name got mentioned and you stood up, and you were encouraged to by one of the Wimbledon officials to stand up, and you took the applause of the crowd. And in the moment, it probably seemed like a very nice moment for you, but within hours, you were getting hammered on social media because people said, well, you're not Captain Tom. What are you doing there on your own at the centre court? Why are you taking the applause of the crowd and so on? You know what people said. How did you feel when you read that reaction?
It was extraordinary. We were invited, Colin and I, as part of that legacy and of the recognition that of the family doing so much to support my father to raise that 40 million. Of course, if he'd been alive, I would have probably gone with him. But instead, we were invited, the two of us. I had never an intention to stand up. Why would I want to do that? But I was not encouraged. I was told to, because the applause was...
Who was it that told you that?
I can't remember.
I think it was the chairman of the club.
I think it might have been. And I would never have stood up, but he'd said, you must stand up. And people were waving and shouting and everything that, how do I stay silent?
See, I feel that was unfair on you.
It was.
All right? I felt that was unfair.
Yeah.
I think the spa pool criticism is justified. I think that, to me, felt unfair. You're representing your dad. You've been right centre stage the whole time. The crowd applauded very warmly, right? So they clearly didn't have a problem with you being there. And you stood up and you thanked them, and it was a nice moment, I thought.
Well, it was amazing. And of course, if someone's waving, I thought it was so rude not to wave back. That's all that I did.
Let's talk about when you become CEO of the foundation. and you put forward that you want to be paid, I think originally it was going to be 3 days a week and you'd be paid £65,000 a year. And then there's an application to increase that to full-time job, £100,000 a year, although there is a range up to £150,000, and you had taken advice from people about the kind of range for a CEO of this kind of foundation, what they might get. Is that an accurate representation of what happened?
The independent trustees came to me and said, would I be prepared to do that job? And I said, yes, I would be prepared to. They went away and benchmarked salary. I didn't ask for anything.
Did you feel any qualms about taking a job which would involve you being paid, effectively, I guess, from public donations, because that finances the foundation, right? That because you were his daughter, actually, and maybe with hindsight, this is the question, whether it would have been much easier for you not to have taken that job.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because at the time, it felt like the only thing to do. Because without the injection from the family, what was it going to become? We had this incredible legacy. Our desire as a family is to ensure that legacy gives the greatest positive social impact that it can. Do you know, in hindsight, I wish I'd never done it. But the foundation would have been much worse off for it. The problem is that what's come since has practically destroyed it. But I think all those things, hindsight is wonderful. We can all look back and think, maybe we should have done things differently.
When the Charity Commission refused the foundation to let you be paid a salary of £100,000, saying it was neither reasonable nor justified, that must have been a pretty difficult moment for you.
But I wasn't part of that discussion. That was the independent trustees.
No, but when you heard they were refusing to let you be paid it,
yes.
you must have known this is going to be a story, it's going to make me look bad, right? It's going to look like I'm trying to get 100 grand running my father's foundation, and I've now had that salary rejected for being unreasonable and unjustified. It just doesn't, forget the fact that I know you, right? When I first saw that, I went, ouch, that doesn't look good.
Only those discussions, I was never part of that 100 range, whatever it was. I only was offered what I was offered.
Right, but you accepted that.
But I accepted what I was offered.
Yeah.
I never ever thought that those discussions would make it into the public arena ever, because they were private discussions.
But your salary was always going to be a public record.
Yeah, but never any of the discussions.
And the argument was that you had no experience that justified that kind of salary, running a huge foundation as chief executive officer. I get the personal part of your thinking, that, well, who else could have done it in your dad's name in the way that you would know, because you knew him so well. I get that. But I think that to expect a salary of £100,000 of public money when you're his daughter, then it looks bad.
Yeah.
It looks bad. It's like, here's Hannah, she wants £100,000 a year for a job she's not really qualified to do in terms of experience at all. If you'd had a background of running charities, it's far more justified, but you didn't. And so the public were like, hang on a second, she's getting 100 grand of our money to do this.
Firstly, I was never offered 100,000. I was offered what they offered me in the end, which was not 100,000.
Well, in the end, they did a deal to pay 85 because that was what the Charity Commission were prepared to accept.
Yes.
But you did accept 100,000 originally because that was put forward to the Charity Commission.
I didn't ever accept 100,000.
Well, that's what they put forward.
Yeah, but I didn't know they were going to offer me 100. I wasn't part of that discussion. Those discussions are between the trustees and the Charity Commission, not me.
But you would have accepted whatever salary they paid you, right?
Probably, yes.
Yeah, so it's a kind of moot point.
Well, maybe it is.
The Charity Commission said you can only pay a maximum of 85,000. I think you went on that on a rolling 3-month scenario while you found somebody else.
Exactly.
I mean, so you said, with hindsight, you wouldn't have taken that job because it just poured more aggro on your head, right?
Yeah, I think in the end, I was asked to do a job for all the right reasons. And because I do have knowledge of global business from my past. And
you were like a marketing director at Swartz
sales
Watches, was it?
Sales and distribution, yes. Yeah, so
right.
for some big brands.
Yeah.
So I wasn't without knowledge, and I knew, and we believed as a family that I could put the charity on the map. And you know what? I did do a really good job whilst I was there. I got it to the point that it had purpose and it had vision and it knew where it was going. But in hindsight, no. I should have said no. I'm not doing it.
The Commission identified potential concerns about payments of consultancy fees and payments to family companies in your first year of accounts. But they then said they were satisfied these specific payments were reasonable reimbursement for expenses incurred by the companies in the formation of a charity. What raised eyebrows was there a total cost of, I think it was £55,725 to the family via companies or direct payments, including nearly £40,000 to Matrix Group Limited, which is your management company set up, I think, in 2010. I guess it's, again, the optics, right? Given that it's your management company, would it have been better, with hindsight, not to have had any money come from the foundation, public money, to your management company, regardless of how legitimate the expense is?
If there had been a mechanism to do that, then yes, it would have been a much more preferable situation, actually, for both sides, because that, it proved difficult for Matrix as well. They weren't our staff. We just paid the money and passed it on pound for pound to the charity.
But to be clear, neither of you have ever made any money directly from the foundation for personal gain.
Not a penny.
No.
There's nothing that's like that.
No. And as we've said, we have never been. So I am a family trustee, and I became a family trustee 12 months after the original charity was set up. I'm a chartered accountant, and I have been very specific. I was very specific right from day one that I had absolutely no access to the bank account. I had no sign-in powers. I've never seen a checkbook, never mind made any payments. I'm not able to make any payments. I'm not an authorised person. Hannah, during her role in 3 months, in theory, was able to authorise payments, but she never did, and we were very clear that that's not something we should do. So the independent trustees had sole discretion as to who they paid, how it was paid, and when it was paid. We have never, ever had a penny out of that.
Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Shortly before the Captain Tom Foundation was launched, Hannah and Colin set up a private company called Club Nook Limited. That company made applications for trademarks related to Sir Tom's name and his image. Well, the Charity Commission says that could have generated a significant profit for the company, and they're looking into whether that's appropriate. In the next part of my interview, the family reveal exclusively how the company has made its money, and it's a lot of money, and why they believe it's unrelated to the charity's work. Club Nook makes £809,000 in its first year, and after creditors were paid, it was left with just under £500,000. That was from the company accounts. And this company was basically licensing trademark registered names for products including beer, spirits, greeting cards, clothing, calendars, biscuits, and so on. That's
potentially.
Potentially. So where did that money come from?
The money came from exactly that, from
products?
Not from products. It came from using his intellectual property.
Right, but where did the actual revenue come from?
As a private company.
But what was the revenue from?
From his assets, from his family trust.
What do you mean?
And from appearances that he made, and other things where he was occasionally paid for those activities.
Right. So Hannah, were you involved in this, in the Club Nook business? So, because you were asked by the Times where the money had come from, and you didn't answer. Just to clarify, where that income, that 800,000, what can you be more specific?
It's not something that we want to talk about because it's, at the end of the day, it's our private.
It's a lot of money,
income.
though.
It's a lot of money, but we also have several businesses, and I think that we shouldn't.
But this one was set up specifically to trademark your father's name.
Yeah,
on
and other business opportunities.
Right.
And
But,
those are,
but where is that money gone?
but those are not all entirely related to Captain Tom. There are other businesses that we have.
Right, but you know, the reason I'm asking is obvious, is that people will think that you've used your father's name in Club Nook Limited to trademark products and you've kept the money. Is that true?
No,
I'm presuming all the revenue that came into that has come from trademark products. That was why it was set
not
up.
all, some.
Some of it has.
What percentage?
Well, I don't know. I couldn't say.
I mean, you are the two, aren't you the two directors?
The majority of it. The majority of it.
So the majority of the 800,000 has come from selling trademark products.
Products associated with his name, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole point
Yeah.
of the company, right?
Yeah.
So what's happened to that money?
It has been used, you know, some of it was used to look after Tom, looked after security, and trying to look to how we can build that in the future.
Right. But you've kept most of it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Okay, so-
private income.
Right. So that for me is another problem, another red flag. I've got to be honest, because I guessed that was what the actual answer was going to be. And the public are going to think, hang on a second, the family has set up this company called Club Nook Limited to trademark the Captain Tom name to sell products, beers, spirits, greeting cards and so on, and they've kept the cash. Why are the charities not getting the cash?
My father was part of all of those discussions, and that company is there in its essence to protect him. That's why it was there. And also from his perspective, that we had a right to live and to live as well as we could live. We were hard workers, and we are not shirkers. We put everything into everything, and we're recompensed. And I think that's fair.
They
There's
had £800,000 by flogging off Captain Tom beer and spirits and biscuits. I mean,
I think you're misleading there. That was potentially an aspiration to that.
well, no,
We got to remember.
Well, no, the company made up £809,000.
It did. That didn't have any public donated money, so that was not public donations.
Was the
that went
public
into
buying the
there.
products?
Not necessarily.
Okay, but what I would say is, I mean, Hannah, you said at the time, Club Nook has not profited from branded merchandise and memorabilia. Club Nook has not been paid by the foundation for use of its trademarks. Club Nook's revenues have been generated by other activities. I mean, that's just not true, is it? The Club Nook has profited heavily from branded merchandise and memorabilia. That statement wasn't correct.
Yeah, it is. It is correct.
Well, it's not, because the Club Nook has profited to the tune of net £500,000
Yeah.
from branded merchandise.
It's from products that hold his name,
Right,
but it's not.
but that's branded product, isn't it, Hannah? I mean, you know that's branded product. There's not the word for it, is it?
I think this is a really I think it's a really unfair line of questioning because
Why?
because these are businesses that we run. They are protecting my father's name. He allowed his name to be used in the charity for charitable purposes. That was it. Anything else
But
stayed.
this is not a charitable purpose.
No.
And when you said to the
but-
Times that Club Nook hadn't profited from branded merchandise, that's not true. It made £809,000 in its first year from branded merchandise.
Can we just stop?
And that's not about protecting. Yeah, but it's not about
No,
protecting.
Piers, can we just
Captain.
stop for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is feeling
Can we just
very
stop?
difficult.
Can we
Oh, sure.
just? Can we stop for a second?
Sure.
And
So
stop filming because this is really unfair.
So it's-
What's unfair?
no. So let us explain off camera.
Well, I'd rather do it on camera.
No. If it's on camera, we're not doing the interview.
The interview was dramatically stopped, and we had a lengthy off-the-record conversation. During the course of this, Hannah and Colin revealed where the revenue had actually come from, and we agreed to go back on the record. So, Colin, here's what I need to establish, because this has been the issue which people have been, I think, rightly concerned about, which is all this money, this £809,000 in the first year that Club Nook Limited raised in revenue. Where did that come from? Because the belief is it came from Captain Tom themed merchandise. Is that the case?
No, the money hasn't come from merchandise. The bulk of that money, the vast majority of that money, came from the 3 books that he wrote with Penguin Random House.
Captain Tom wrote, the 3 books.
That Captain Tom wrote.
Including one was a big runaway #1 bestseller.
Yeah, so Tomorrow Will Be a Good Day, which is his autobiography, which is about his life.
And what percentage of the Club Nook money was from those books?
95% of it.
So the vast majority?
Yeah.
Was there any other merchandise-themed product?
No.
Never any?
No.
So Club Nook never made any revenue from Captain Tom-themed merchandise outside of these books?
No.
So Hannah, the question I guess about the books is, people will say, well, the books are based on his fame, which came from the charity walks. Why has that money not gone to charity?
These were my father's books, and it was honestly such a joy for him to write them. But they were his books. The deal was done. He had an agent, and the agent and he worked on that deal. They were Captain Tom's books, and his wishes whether that money would sit in Club Nook, and in the end,
for you to keep.
Yes.
He said that specifically to you?
Specifically.
Was there anything on any of the books that referred to the Captain Tom Foundation?
Absolutely not.
Was there anything in the contracts that referred to Captain
Absolutely
Tom Foundation? So there was never any agreement by you on behalf of your father with these book deals that any of that money would go to charity?
Absolutely not. And remember that he wrote these books. He started writing them fairly early on, just as the walk had finished. And they were all signed off. He'd finished them by the June of 2020. They were never anything to do with the charity.
What will you say to people who'll say you shouldn't have kept that money? That it should have all gone to the charity? That these books were based on Captain Tom, the public are buying the books, it should all have gone to charity. What will you say to those?
But they were my father's books. He wrote them, and he decided what to do with the income from them. It was his wishes, not ours. He made the decision about the things that he did. We didn't act for him.
Colin, I mean, people will criticise this, you know that. But are you comfortable looking back? Would you do the same thing again? Given all the attention that's now been put on you as a family, all the criticism, would you, if you had your time again, keep that money?
Yes. You know, it was his money, his income, and just because the charity happened to be called Captain Tom Foundation doesn't mean that his assets are all suddenly owned by the charity. And I think, you know, one of the things we've thought about quite a lot is probably in hindsight calling the foundation Captain Tom Foundation and allowing his name to be used in that, especially as a living person, was the wrong thing to do. And we probably, you know, that advice should have come forward to us at the beginning, but it didn't. And, you know, we've come to regret it, and been associated with a foundation, and suddenly everything is associated with the foundation, which is incorrect.
There will be people who say that you shouldn't, as a family, have made any money off the back of your father, including the books, including everything, right? What do you say to those people, Hannah?
But they were his books. He might have lived for another 4 or 5 years, and that wasn't income we took from him. It was income from his books that he loved to write, and I suppose there'll always be criticism. We can't do right for doing wrong. In the end, they were his, and if he was sitting here today, he'd say, yes, Piers, that's exactly what we talked about. We're not making up what he wanted. He was alive when that book deal happened. We didn't make the decisions for him. He made them.
Since I recorded this interview, we discovered a statement on the charity's website and a tweet from Captain Tom's account, which do imply that the books could support the foundation. The charity's mentioned in one of the books, and the prologue to his autobiography says this: "Astonishingly, at my age, with the offer to write this memoir, I've also been given the chance to raise even more money for the charitable foundation now established in my name." 2 more books were published after his death in 2021, one offering a £1 donation to the foundation for each book sold. And whether any of this broke any rules will ultimately be for the Charity Commission to decide. And let me ask you about another thing which caused criticism. This is where you've appeared at awards ceremonies, the Virgin Media O2 Captain Tom Foundation Connector Awards, which included the name of the charity and the charity's logo on its award plaques. You were at the time the interim chief executive of the foundation, but your fee wasn't paid to the foundation but to the Matrix Group. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how much were you paid for these awards?
Well, the charity got a donation, and
Yeah.
I was paid £18,000 for that.
Once only, or was
Once.
it? So you were paid £18,000, and how much did the charity get?
£2,000.
2,000. The criticism again is obvious, which is that you shouldn't have been paid. This is your father's foundation awards. It's set up in his name. You're the foundation chief executive. Why are you getting paid £18,000 and keeping £16,000 of it? What do you say to that?
Well, that relationship with Virgin Media started way back in 2020, where my father was paid to be a judge, and judges are often paid.
Was he paid?
Yes.
And he kept that money?
Yes. And it wasn't award ceremonies, it was a community awards.
Right.
So the first one, I was doing it with him because of course he couldn't do it by himself. They were about awarding a community awards with Virgin Media. That relationship continued and they asked me to keep working with them. By the time we evolved it, they were now Virgin Media O2. And all of those discussions were happening even before I was imagining being interim CEO. So those plans were already.
But do you understand why people...
I do. And
do you wish you hadn't taken the money now?
I think, in hindsight, what I should have done is stalled that relationship either to afterwards.
Or just given the money to the foundation?
Yeah.
You were the chief executive of the foundation.
It's,
The award was for your father, right?
well, they were the Captain Tom Awards.
Yeah.
I worked with Virgin Media to ensure that the charity got some money and recognition because I knew that they would get huge recognition through social media and hopefully real engagement with the charity for looking at these, for seeing how the charity was becoming involved in the awards.
All of which I think is completely valid and good, right? Just for the record, I think they're excellent awards.
Yeah.
The only question is whether you should have pocketed the cash. I mean, I would say that looking at that, it doesn't look good. You know, you're the chief executive of the foundation. The foundation awards are in your father's name. To keep £16,000 just for turning up and presenting a few awards seems to me to be the wrong thing to do. Do you think that?
I think that it's all very easy to look back and think I should have made different decisions, but I hadn't planned on being the CEO, and I also only knew that I was only ever there for 3 months at a time. So I didn't know if I would have employment past those 3 months.
I get that, yeah.
And I'm not in a position where I can not work. So for me, when we were planning all those dates, they may well have fallen in a period of time when I wasn't the CEO. But that's how it landed. And I absolutely ensured that the charity got a donation.
Well, once you knew you were CEO, when you turned up at the awards, and you knew you were getting the money, wouldn't the better thing to have been to just give it all to the foundation?
I think the better thing to have done would have been to push those awards to outside that period of time, because I was only ever going to be there for 9 months. So I should have just pushed them forward or brought them in advance.
But people will hear that and go, so you just wanted the money. Whereas actually, wouldn't it, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for you to look back and say, actually, I shouldn't have taken that money, it was wrong. Might be a better answer. I mean, I don't want to tell you how to answer these questions because I'm the one asking them, but it makes it sound like that answer makes it sound like you just wanted the cash.
But I think the reality is that I have to work for a living. And that relationship with them was an ongoing relationship.
But you were being paid £85,000 a year for that job.
Well,
to be CEO of the Captain Tom Foundation.
Not
and
to
these were
be-
the Captain Tom Foundation Awards.
Well, not to be too pedantic, but I was never going to earn 80 because I could never have been there for a whole year.
No, I understand, but that was the pro rata rolling 3-month annual
Yeah,
deal,
yeah.
right?
And look, absolutely in hindsight, the two things should have been separated. The two things should have been separated. But that's not how it landed. And it was done with love and with trying to ensure that the community benefited and the Captain Tom Foundation benefited. And yes, I got paid.
When BBC Newsnight asked you about this, you said via email, "You are awful, it's a total lie." That was your first response.
No,
You then said that 6 minutes later you added, "Apologies, that reply was for a scammer who's been creating havoc."
Which is absolutely true.
which is true.
But
I
did
mean,
you actually give them any clarification about
No.
the money? Why were you reluctant to?
Because I think that we were being... I probably received, well, many emails trying to demand information. And we genuinely wanted to make sure that when we do talk, that we talk on our terms and that we're saying it how it is. And I didn't think that was the right place.
I can see
yeah.
that this has had a very traumatic effect on you, the whole thing.
Yeah,
right?
the whole thing.
And the hatred it's brought, the abuse it's brought you, the questioning of your integrity, the diminishing, as some would say, of the reputation of your father must be particularly
Terrible.
hurtful. I can see the effect it's had on you.
yeah. And I
I mean, let me just pick up with Hannah on that.
Yeah.
I mean, articulate how it's been for you.
I mean, utterly devastating. To think that we had something that we thought could make a global positive impact, to be devastated overnight. Because, of course, when everything's positive and good, everyone wants to associate with you. And then when there's just a flicker of doubt, all the people who were engaging with us left, literally left. It took a little bit longer for things to flick into our business life, but suddenly contracts weren't being renewed.
The foundation is probably
The-
never able to recover from
I don't
this.
think
No,
it
the
will never
foundation.
recover.
The foundation's not able to recover. The trustees don't want to close it. You know, and I come back to what it's done to Hannah in particular. I mean, she has been extremely ill, and
From the stress.
from the stress, extremely ill, and we all have.
What's your overriding message to the world? Because the world followed this story.
I think that we as a family, all we've ever wanted to do was ensure that my father's legacy has the greatest possible positive impact on society, wherever that is. And we felt that we were really close to being able to do it. And that has been taken away. And yes, of course, we're all judged on hindsight. But what we have to remember is where we were and how we were making decisions was in a different time. We were operating at 1,000 miles an hour. Nothing ever felt that we had any time or calm essence to make decisions. So of course we can look back and say some of those things should have been done differently. But I think give us some credit for being human and that we weren't an extraordinary family. We're just a family trying to do our best in the circumstances we were plunged into. So of course we can look back and think optically that may not look right, but it was never our intent to do anything other than work with my father's legacy to give as much as we could to the world, and that allows people far beyond my father's lifetime or ours, that allows people to touch this incredible
What would
legacy.
he be thinking now, looking down on what's been happening to you?
Well, he would sit here with us and say, I'm with them. We haven't been that family who's tried to take his legacy and make it for our own gain. We're trying our best. We've tried our best to do the right thing, and sometimes it's turned out it wasn't, but not through intent.
Benji, how have you felt as your mum's boy? You're 19.
It's just utterly devastating, and to see the impact it's had on her. And people can have opinions. That is up to them. But what you cannot stand is threats and abuse that are just vile. And the difficulty she's had to go through watching that as a son in particular has been utterly devastating.
I mean, just to see your mum now tearing up again.
But Absolutely. I mean, there's
seen
been
a lot of
times,
that.
there's been genuine times where I don't think she's known if she could go on. And I've sat there and thought that as well. But the utter mental drain that it's caused
Have
us.
you felt that way? Have you felt like ending it all?
Well, no, I'm my father's daughter at the end of the day, but it has been totally devastating.
And it's all very well saying, well, this is what we try to do. One of the other really important things is we want to continue to do. You know, we absolutely believe in a world without ageism. We absolutely believe that Tom's legacy needs to do something going forward, and is a very important thing that we need to keep going, you know, in the world.
Georgia, what's it been like for you? I mean, no young girl wants to see her mum like this.
I know she's always trying to put on a smile to make sure I don't really know that much, but I know it's really draining for them all the time, every single day. Even at night, I know that they're going to wake up with a smile, even if they're really draining inside.
Has it been tough for you?
Tough for seeing my parents and family getting hate and abuse from people inside the social media. It makes me don't want to go on to social media.
Well, listen, thank you for sharing your time with me, a lot of time. You took all the questions, you said you would. I think it's important you did. People can make their own minds up. It's extremely tough, clearly, I can see from your reaction. And I'm sorry to see you like this, all of you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
Thank you.